Fabled!
You guys know anything about dual terminal? No? Yeah, me neither. Which is why that's the only time I'm gonna acknowledge it in this video, with like maybe a few exceptions. The Fabled monsters have to be some of my favorites in the game for how fun they look. They got so many wild colors and a hilarious amount of personality. It just sucks that their deck is complete garbage. To those unaware, the central gimmick of a Fabled deck is to facilitate powerful effects by discarding other monsters who then gain more beneficial effects from being discarded. Sound familiar? But unlike that Fiend deck, this one never made much of a case for itself to be played over anything else. At least with Dark World, as inconsistent as they may be, that deck can pull off some real unfair plays if allowed to really go in. Fabled monsters don't really have that type of control or power. They don't hand rip, they don't negate much, all they can do is combo, which isn't the worst thing ever if what they were building up to was worth it. Anyway, yeah, here's me explaining why it's not worth it. TLDR, if you want a synchro climb, just play some synchron slop. A few things before we get started. First, I'm gonna separate these monsters into two categories. The first being the Fabled, and the second being Fabled. Now, you're probably hearing that and going, Ryan, what the fuck are you talking about? And to that I would say, Mr. Beast! I'm not doing a third of that. Oh my god. See, the deck is split between three different types of cards. First, there's the Spell and Trap cards, which there are only 3 of and will be saved for last. Next, we have Fabled monsters, which are all light fiends. And then there are the Fabled monsters, which are all exclusively level 4 or lower light beasts. What makes them the Fabled as opposed to just Fabled? Who knows? Maybe they're one of a kind. It makes a bit more sense seeing that the Japanese name for the archetype is Demon Roar God, but all the beast type monsters are Demon Roar God Beast specifically. So I suppose this was done in case the Fabled becomes a sub-archetype in their own right later down the line. At least it keeps them distinguished. Another thing I wish to point out is that this is the first time I'll be covering a deck that I don't believe I'm very good at. I can use them, but I always feel like I'm unoptimal when piloting. Synchro decks tend to be some of the hardest for me to wrap my head around, pendulums notwithstanding, so hopefully I can do this archetype justice despite being a little dog shit at it. Final thing, and I promise that's it, the cards that I show on screen might not match what I'm saying because I might accidentally show older prints that are out of date with their PSCT. This includes shit like saying when it's supposed to say if, you get it. I'll try to be on top of it best I can, but no promises. Starting off this shit show is the very annoyingly named the Fabled Pegasus. Listen, I get that all of the beast fables are based on many different mythological creatures and are purposefully misspelled for some reason, but you couldn't ask for a name to age any worse than this unless it was called Epstein or something. Maybe you think it aged better. And if that's the case, I got you a very special surprise. You just have to open this suspiciously menacing door for it. Go on. It's got 67 years worth of mogging lessons on the other side. Anyway, back to Peg. That's not much better. Its effect is, when this card is discarded to the graveyard, you can special summon it in face down defense position. When this card is flipped face up, you can reveal one Fabled monster in your hand, send one Fabled monster from your deck to the graveyard. Despite what the effect communicates, summoning a monster face down is actually anti-field presence, since you can't do anything with it other than maybe to tribute. Even then, there are better monsters that can facilitate the same action with less restriction. No! You're not fusing with it. Needing it to be flipped face up again in order to perform a Foolish is the most backwater way for this deck to be able to facilitate such a simple combo. Especially considering you need some setup in your hand for this to go off. No insult that I could ever hurl at this thing would be anywhere near as humiliating as its own name. So let's just move on. If you really want a level 1 Fabled tuner, you're much better off with the Fabled Chawa. Ah, yes, the mythical creature only spoken about in legends! The Chihuahua! Is that actually how it's spelled? Looks like chinchilla. Its effect reads, during your main phase, you can activate this effect, discard 1 Fabled monster, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand. Keep in mind, you must discard a Fabled monster other than itself. Oh, Chawa, you're no fortress. Although it needs another Fabled monster in hand to do anything on its own, summoning itself for free and providing discarding to facilitate the other monster's effects makes it relatively useful to search for and continue a combo with. Feels weird calling this thing an extender, but it's pretty decent at it. Worst case scenario, it's a level 1 tuner, and if Infernity has taught me anything, sometimes that's all you need. The Fabled Catsith, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but who cares, is also a level 1 tuner with the effect, if this card is discarded to the graveyard, target 1 face-up card on the field, destroy that target. A decent removal effect, but unless you can drag that cat onto the field, not much more. Situationally, it can be better or worse than Chawa, so run either by preference. Something you may have noticed when looking at these effects is they haven't been once per turn at all so far. To my understanding, these cards were made before that was properly implemented into every card ever printed till the end of time, with the exception of later support, of course. Despite being able to activate most of these effects multiple times in one turn, the fact that you'll be at such a hand minus from discarding constantly means that you won't be able to use them as often as you would like. It's pretty much balanced by the fact that it most often won't pop up. Speaking of Infernity, that's a deck that can go minus in card advantage and still somehow use non-once per turn effects to their limit. Fabled cards can kinda do that sometimes, but it's nowhere near as explosive. Moving on to the level 2s, we've got the Fabled Nozuchi. During your main phase, you can discard 1 Fabled monster, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand. When this card is special summoned this way, you can special summon 1 level 2 or lower Fabled monster from your hand. Same effect as Chawa, but with some potential extra swarming. Man, I can't seem to go a single card without bringing up Chawa in some way. Truly an influential card. The obvious intent with this additional effect is to summon a low-leveled Fabled tutor so you can go into a level 3 or 4 synchro, or a Link monster now, I guess.
Synchro?
This does mean taking 3 cards out of your hand to summon at least 2 guys, and this wouldn't be that big of a deal if it didn't all have to be from the hand. Running one is fine to search out when needed, but will require a lot of setup beforehand, so be mindful of that.
If I had a nickel for every Shukinoko in this game used in a discard-focused archetype with an effect to summon itself for free, I'd have bronchitis.
The Fabled Abenak is just a fucking beaver. The hell kind of mythical creature is this? Apparently the Afanak is a Welsh creature that can sometimes take the form of a beaver. And also a demon. Good enough, I guess! Well, here's the effect. If this card is in your graveyard, you can discard 1 Fabled monster, and if you do, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect of the Fabled Abenak once per turn. Finally, a hard once per turn. A level 2 tuner that summons itself for free and helps extend combos. The banishing can be a bit harsh, but its simplicity more than makes up for it. One of the rare times these effects can go off while it's in the graveyard rather than the hand, so I'll take what I can get. Always run at least one of these. Next up, we have the Fabled Surable. If this card is discarded to the graveyard, special summon it. For some reason, I got a sense of foreboding from reading that. Was probably nothing. This was, for the longest time, the single best Fabled card in the game. Splashable in any deck that needed discarding for cost, turning that cost into a benefit. It also, being a mandatory effect activation, also leads to some occasional chain disruption. Sorry, Ubel! As you can imagine, there are a good amount of decks that would really appreciate a free level 2 tuner. But as discarding has mostly fallen out of style, not that it was ever in the first place, Cerebral's usage gradually dropped to the point that no one cares anymore. Nowadays, if anyone wants to summon light beasts for free to go into synchro climbing, they're gonna be playing Yummy instead. Still, it should be said that Cerebral is one of the best tuners this deck ever had. I'm using past tense because, despite all that, there appears to be another level 2 beast tuner that, while not as splashable, is much more impactful for the Fabled playstyle. The Fabled Behemoth. Fair warning, compared to the previous effects, this might as well be a dissertation. If this card is in your hand, you can discard 2 or more Fabled monsters, including this card, and if you do, special summon 1 Fabled Synchro monster from your extra deck, whose level equals the discarded monster's total original levels. This is treated as a synchro summon. If a card is sent from your hand to the graveyard while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can banish this card, special summon 1 Fabled monster from your hand. You can only use each effect of the Fabled Behemoth once per turn. Okay, I know that sounds like a lot, but it's actually quite simple. The first effect basically lets you synchro summon using Fabled monsters from the hand while proccing the discard effects of the materials used. And yes, this can include using other tuners along with it. This single card allows you to make your plays and get your combos off without having to go into too much of a minus to facilitate everything. The second effect just summons an extra guy from hand, which isn't always the best, but it helps keep up field presence, which this deck really needed. Mr. Pogface over here came out in the latest wave of support, and it shows, as this one card fixes so many of the problems this deck was facing all on its own. And there are still 3 other cards from said wave. It will never not be funny, and slightly disappointing to me, that Fableds can receive the equivalent of custom cards with almost no restriction on how they can go about card design, and still no one's playing them. Well, run 3 of these guys if you want any competent plays. And now we're brought back down to mediocrity with the Fabled Ganashia. If this card is discarded to the graveyard, special summon it. If summoned this way, it gains, oh boy, I get to say the thing, 200 attack, but banish it when it leaves the field. Having the same summoning condition is... Oh, sorry, I blanked out there for a second. Having the same summoning condition as Cerebral, Ganashia has no reason to be played over it. It's not a tuner, it banishes itself, and the best use out of it other than synchro material is as a beater. And a really bad one at that. Don't play this. If you really want to summon a level 3 off a discard, then boy do I have the call back for you! Seemingly cut from the same cloth, we have the Fabled Cockataur. Awesome, dude. Thanks for making me say that. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can discard 1 Fabled monster, draw 1 card. Yet another shitty beater disguising its dumbass ability as synergistic. There are people who run Ganashia just for field presence and being a Fabled monster, but even those players run it over Cockataur. Enough said. The final main deck beast monster is the Fabled Ruby Ruta. When this face-up card you control is targeted for an attack, you can discard 1 Fabled monster, negate that attack. You ever just beg your opponent to attack you to get a combo off? At least with Cockataur, you were the one attacking and went hand neutral. It's not just dog shit, it's worse than dog shit. Or chicken shit, I guess. I don't know. Is that a thing? My favorite excuse for if I don't know if a joke will land will just go, is this anything? And suddenly that absolves me of not being funny, I guess. I don't know. We aren't done with the Fableds yet, because they also have 2 synchro monsters. The first of these is the Fabled Kudabi. As a heads up, all the synchro monsters have the same summoning requirements, with one exception. So until I get to that one specifically, just know that they all require a Fabled tuner and 1 or more non-tuners. This card gains the following effect based on the number of cards in your hand. 0, cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. 3 or more, once per turn, during the end phase, destroy this card. Wow! Forced hand management to get either a Time Lord or Scrap Kong! I know this deck has a tendency to leave you with a small hand from all the discarding going on, but giving you a 2200 attacker immune to destruction is not something that should require non-generic status, especially if it's gonna kill itself! Easily the worst synchro in the deck. Don't bother. And now for the final beast monster in the deck, the Fabled Unicorn. While you and your opponent have the same number of cards in hand, negate all cards and effects activated by your opponent, and if you do, destroy those cards. This was originally the best thing Fabled as a deck had unique to itself before the new wave of support. While matching your hand with the opponent can be a little tricky, the fact that it has the ability to completely shut down every single card your opponent tries to play has always made it worth considering when thinking up degenerate strategies. Not the easiest card to run, even for actual Fabled decks, but it still holds up as a pristinely degenerate piece of shit. Now with those fellas out of the way, we can move on to the Fiends. Starting with the most inconsequential of them all, Fabled Lurie. If this card is discarded to the graveyard, special summon it. Once again, we have Cerebral's effect, but this time, it's exactly the same. No pretending to be something it isn't. Unfortunately, this means Lurie is severely outclassed, as there's never been any reason to want to use him over a tuner. As Cerebral's relevance continues to wane, so does Lurie's, as he will always live in the shadow of what is simply a better card. Tragic, but true. Next up, we've got Fiendsmith Engraver. His effect reads, you can discard this card, add 1 Fiendsmith spell or trap from your deck. Wait. That's not a Fabled card, what the fuck is that? Okay, time to be real. Though everything I said before was technically true, there is one unique aspect about Lurie that sets him apart from Cerebral, and that's him being a Fiend type instead of a beast. Also being level 1 instead of 2, but if anything that just gives Cerebral sprite synergy. This had never mattered before, but with the introduction of the Fiendsmith cards, it's almost like they were designed with him in mind exclusively. For those that don't know, for some reason, Fiendsmith is an archetype designed around supporting light fiend monsters, and especially decks centered around them. Yes, all 2 of them! Because their spell card can search for any light fiend and just so happens to require a discard afterwards, using it to search for and then immediately dump Lurie lets him immediately summon himself onto the field and acting as the only material necessary to go into their Link 1. This single action gave you access to full Fiendsmith combo. It doesn't even make Lurie that much of a brick, because even if you draw him, just normal summon him. Or better yet, search for a different monster with the spell and discard Lurie anyway. You can do that, it's a free country, allegedly. As you can imagine, having near perfect synergy with Fiendsmiths gives Fableds a lot more to work with than just their own isolated playstyle. Make sure you do yourself and your busted down car a favor and grab yourself that engine. As for Lurie himself, it's not often one of the worst cards in the deck becomes the single most used one out of them all. But if anyone deserved it, it'd definitely be him. I always felt bad for this guy because the mere existence of Cerebral made it obsolete for the longest time. Who could have guessed all it took was the right type of cards to show what he was truly capable of? Link 1s will do that to you. Thankfully, he's just as useful here as he is with any other Fiendsmith deck, but with even more versatility, so it's still worth running. Congratulations, my chud son. You've earned it. Their last level 1 is Fabled Topi, getting a sister vibe from her, what with the visual resemblance to Luri, so let's see if she can compare. If your opponent has 2 or more cards in their hand than you do, you can reveal 1 Fabled monster in your hand and tribute this face-up card. Then, target 2 spell trap cards your opponent controls, destroy those targets. You know what? This was almost decent. This has 1 restriction too many to let it see use. Why does it need to be dependent on your opponent's hand if it's not a quick effect? Why do you still need another Fabled monster in the hand and not even let you discard it? Why does it need to be on the field? Why can't it just be revealed in the hand and discarded for cost? And this might sound petty at this point, but with all the stipulations it's warranted. But why does it have to be 2 and not up to 2? It is so incredibly painful how close this could have been to an in-archetype hand trap, but I guess it was too early for them to be that forward-thinking. Well, sorry Topi, but you just didn't cut it. Good luck asking for a retrain though. We now have Fabled Ultra. Oh, awesome, dude! I love having to deal with obnoxious babies in my badass demon deck. Really gives it character. Once per turn, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, special summon 1 level 3 Fabled monster from your hand. Again, all this focus on the hand. God forbid any of this searching or summoning came from the deck. Best we got so far is Pegasus. It's actually so cool, dude. Okay, so this little guy needs to somehow get on the field, send a card instead of discarding because that would have been too good, I guess, then still have another card in hand to act as a target. Despite the clunkiness, that doesn't sound too bad until you realize that the only cards you can summon off of this effect are a total of 3. Not just in this deck, in the whole game! Shout out to the Curry Bandits. Let's evaluate how bad this card really is.
I think you're not real. I think you are a plant, and I'm not afraid to say it.
The first target is Ganashia, and even if you wanted to use him for whatever reason, summoning him this way does not take advantage of his discard effect. Dog shit. Next target is Fabled Diff. I might as well cover him now to get him out of the way. His effect is, when a Fabled monster is sent from the hand to the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can tribute this card, then target one of those monsters, special summon it. Now, there is an idea of a combo here. By summoning this dad you'd fuck with Ultro, he can then kill himself to summon the supposed monster you sent for cost. While a neat idea, the fact that Ultro is so strictly limited in what it can summon, and you never guarantee to also have another Fabled in hand to discard, means that this can only happen when searching to add all the cards to hand. And at that point, why bother? Diff's effect on its own is also just lackluster. If you can summon him, you can summon what he would have recovered otherwise. The last target I'll save for later, as it's the only level 3 monster in the deck I'd call good, to the point where it still sees play in Fabled decks. And while that does sound appealing, especially with him being a tuner that with Ultro's effect gives you a free level 5 synchro, it actually prefers to be in the graveyard to facilitate combos. And even though using it as synchro material would do that, you're better off dumping it from the deck or, you know, discarding it? It is for this reason that I deem Ultro as the absolute worst card in the deck, and subsequently, the least visually appealing. There is nothing redeemable about this card. Take a punishment worthy of your existence! Curse of Time! Well then, looks like we now have to deal with this thing instead. Fabled Mitsutoji, this Fire Emblem 3 Houses looking motherfucker, man, it always comes back to that game, has the following effect. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, then target one non-tuner Fabled monster you control. That monster is treated as a tuner while face up on the field. Oh, so they can have hand traps? Well, I don't know if you'd call this a trap, it's more like a cry for help.
Fucking ass trap!
Tunifying your monsters would have been cute if the deck was that desperate for them, but they aren't, so it's not. Moving on. Take a punishment worthy of your existence! Curse of Time! Oh my fucking god, bro. That's gonna be funny to listen back to. Holy shit. Fabled Raven says, once per turn, you can discard any number of cards, and if you do, this card gains 1 level and 400 attack for each discarded card until the end of this turn. Hell yeah, dude. Put this thing on a Slifer deck and watch it really pop off! Eat your heart out, calculator! Nah, cut that. That's fucking stupid. I get it. Having a tuner with level modulation can be pretty fun. I guess another beater if you want to be real funny. But it's an effect that is solely dependent on what cards you have left in your hand that you'd be willing to discard. The deck is flexible enough to not need something like this, so you're better off running cards with more reliable, fixed stats. This one's for the birds. Their last level 2, and their most important one, is Fabled Cross. Make sure to be on the lookout for the Fabled Snoozy in the future. If this card is discarded to the graveyard, target one other level 4 or lower Fabled monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. As you can imagine, this is one of their strongest forms of field presence. It's a bit annoying how you need another Fabled already engraved to proc it, but if you somehow dump 2 crosses at the same time, they can technically summon each other. Worth running 3 to make this deck get off the ground. Or out of it, I guess. Graveyard humor! If it wasn't for that bum-ass baby, this is where I'd talk about diff. But at least I can instead talk about the good level 3 in this deck. Fabled Kushano. If this card is in your graveyard, you can discard one Fabled monster to the graveyard, except Fabled Kushano, add this card to your hand. While this does prevent an infinite loop, this and Crush are why the lack of once per turn effects in these cards matter. Sending Kushano to grave lets him proc discard effects whenever you want, without missing out on card advantage. Being a tuner also helps, as he can continue making plays if brought to the field. Though you only need one of these, don't be deceived. This is your best enabler in the deck. Starting off the level 4s, we've got Fabled Urustos. None of the rest of the guys are tuners, except for a synchro we'll get to later, so keep that in mind. While you have 2 or less cards in your hand, all face-up Fabled monsters you control gain 400 attack. I don't understand why they insist on us wanting to use these cards as a beatdown strategy when I can think of 3 machine decks that can do the job for me. I guess it's funny that it can stack, but they took an effect that'd be bad as a continuous spell and put it on a monster that must remain on the field for it to work. Maybe if it worked like Phantom Beast Crosswing, where it gave the boost while in the graveyard, but even then, it would be generous to call it questionable to run. So as is, don't. Fabled Gollibus, looking like he just came out of a comic book, says, you can discard 1 card to the graveyard, then target 1 monster your opponent controls with defense less than or equal to this card's attack, destroy that target. I guess it's a form of removal, especially when comboed with Urustos! But if I want to destroy a face-up card on the field, I'm running Cat Sith. Next! Fabled Ashenvale says, once per battle, if this card battles during damage calculation, quick effect, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. This card gains 600 attack during that damage calculation only. Oh hey, a damage step effect. That means it's completely broken. I guess that could be a fun way to perform some combos, but if all that amounts to is a guy temporarily going from 1600 to 2200, then I'm good without him. Getting back on track with some actual quality is Fabled Marcosia. You can tell it's good because it's long and ends with a once per turn clause. Realistically, it's probably called Marcosia, but I'm not re-recording this because I don't care, and you shouldn't either. Thank you. If this card is in your hand, you can discard up to 2 monsters, except Fabled Marcosia, but including another Fabled monster, and if you do, special summon this card. If summoned this way, this card gains 200 attack for each monster discarded! If this card is discarded to the graveyard, add 1 Fabled spell or trap from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Fabled Marcosia once per turn. So unless you have some real specific play in mind, you won't be discarding 2 for the summon, because we all know that attack boost means nothing, and only exists to be disguised as a benefit when it should just be seen as an option. Discarding to summon is a nice effect to have, but what really stands out for this monster in particular is the second effect. This is one of the only cards in the game that can search for Fabled background. Running as many copies of Marcosia as possible is recommended. even if he has to rely on other cards to make it work. Who needs self-sufficiency when you've got family? The last level 4, at least in the main deck, is Fabled Grimrow. If you control a face-up Fabled monster, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, add one Fabled monster from your deck to your hand, except Fabled Grimrow. So Grimrow just said, "Fuck family, I want my Chawa!" Just by having any guy on the field, this card can grab any other guy you could need, while also setting herself up in the graveyard for something like Cruss. Another great effect lacking a once per turn, so make sure to run 3. Their only level 6 is Fabled Sulcius. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 2 cards from your hand to the graveyard, except Fabled Sulcius, special summon this card. I wouldn't say Sulcius is a bad card, but there really isn't any reason to want to run him in current decks. The cost is a bit heavy, even if, again, it's not once per turn, and he sends instead of discards, the dumb fuck. I have a soft spot for this guy, though. He has one of the best designs in the deck, and I had some fun with him for the short time I played Duel Links. So unless you find yourself in a different format where you can make the most of him, he's not recommended. If they can make Lurie work, then I choose to believe in Sulcius. Godspeed, you dumb clod. The last main deck Fabled monster is this freak of nature, the level 8 Fabled Dayanara. You can tribute summon this card in face-up attack position by tributing one Fabled monster. Once per turn, the first opponent's normal spell card effect to resolve becomes your opponent discards 1 card. With how bad these beaters have been so far, they now seem even worse, seeing as there is a single Tribute 2800 attacker sitting there the whole time. It can also just flat out be special summoned, such as with Augmenday! So getting it on the field isn't the worst. The fact it has some disruption effect to go along with it does make it tempting to be worth considering, but the fact it's limited to normal spells only makes it useless outside of the opponent's turn. That and being mandatory makes it tricky to work with, but the fact it's inherent and doesn't activate makes it even more appealing in my opinion. I am so tempted to say run by preference, but the only preference is how funny you want your end board to be. That being said, if you're playing Fableds, you might as well have a fun time doing it. Going back into the synchros and returning to the newest wave of support, we have Fabled Gamajin, the aforementioned tuner synchro. Your opponent cannot target other Fabled synchro monsters you control with card effects. You can only use each of the following effects of Fabled Gamajin once per turn. If this card is synchro summoned, you can special summon one Fabled monster from your hand or deck. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can draw cards equal to the number of Fabled synchro monsters you control, then discard 1 card. There are so many things this card does right, it's laughable. First off, the targeting protection to your other synchros is nice, as their effects going off can be the difference between full combo and half combo. Second, he just summons another guy for you, and thank God we could do it from the deck now. Took long enough to let us. Then finally, letting you draw as much as you invested in, and giving another discard proc. This guy is the definition of the perfect extender. Make sure to prioritize bringing him out as soon as possible. Their level 5 is Fabled Reagan. He would be a demon. When this card is synchro summoned, you can draw until you have 2 cards in your hand. You know what they say, it's just pot of greed! I get wanting to have some sort of limitation when it comes to giving free draws, but it's already archetypal locked, so it feels a bit too harsh. Still, this is a discard archetype, and the effect is, again, not once per turn, so you're better off not having to worry about that hand minus as much. Run as many as you feel comfortable with. For the level 6 synchro, we got Fabled Andraith. God, I love that name. If this card is special summoned, your opponent can discard 1 card to negate this effect, otherwise you draw 2 cards, then discard 1 card. If a monster is sent from your opponent's hand to the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can target one of those monsters, special summon it to your field, but negate its effects. You can only use each effect of Fabled Andraith once per turn. I am such a big fan of how this effect works, giving your opponent the illusion of choice. In a bad deck, well, I guess, a worse deck, letting the other player make a decision, often the clearly better one, reeks of flavor with no actual strategy, to the point where it's optimal to take that choice away. Now, drawing 2 and discarding 1 in most decks would be a good effect on its own, but it offers the opponent a chance to have it negated at the cost of one of their cards. Theoretically, this can act as pseudo hand ripping, since sending a monster runs the risk of us just taking it for ourselves, and if it's not, the spell or trap they send would still have potentially been needed for their plays. There's obviously a lot of risks involved with this, including a lot of floating effects, but the idea of this usurper of the throne type character, I assume, again, I'm not touching Dual Terminal, this is mostly what I'm getting from the trap card, having such an aligned effect makes it so I can't help but love him. I'm an absolute sucker for those Starscream type characters. Besides, the second effect, technically not being tied to the first, means he can also grab a hand trap if it's used after he makes it to the field beforehand and is still there somehow. He can also just generally be good for the next turn, when your opponent does plays involving sending a monster from hand to grave for whatever reason. Really good for snatching an important piece to their combo, like if they're fusing really hard or whatever. It's still worth running at least a copy regardless, that draw effect is just too good. Yay for treason! The act, not the card, but yay for that too. I think it was originally called Regicide or something, That's funny.
What's wrong with you?
The level 8 synchro is Fabled Valkyrus. Once per turn, you can discard 1 Fiend monster, draw 1 card. Sorry all the Fabled fans, you're shit out of luck! It's whatever. I could think of a few Fiend decks that would appreciate this, but being level 8 and demanding a Fabled tuner kind of impedes its practicality for being worth running. Might as well reach for Chaos Angel at that point. As for this deck, you can take it or leave it, but again, you're better off making something that does something a bit more. Hey, if you want to treat this guy as an extender, by all means, but that's a pretty high level investment for an extender. Unless he just conveniently have a level 2 tuner on standby, which, you know what, in all fairness. But yeah, run depending on what your combos consist of, I guess. And now, we get to what was considered the boss monster of this deck for the longest time. Fabled Leviathan. When this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target up to 3 Fabled monsters in your graveyard, add them to your hand. Are we for real right now? This was what the deck was supposedly building up to? You're gonna go so far as to make this named tuner needing, level 10 having, Knuckles the Echidna looking motherfucker only have an effect that goes off when he fucking dies? I don't care if it helps me recover my hand. What good are these combos if they don't lead to anything? Again, if I'm gonna make a level 10 with a light tuner, I'm just making Chaos Angel! Fuck it, man, I could make Barone! And even though they weren't around at the time of its release, there are several fucking synchros that do so much more than waiting for you to let them kill themselves! Do they expect you to pop them on your own? What, like with Catsith? This really sucks, man, because I really like this guy. The vibes are on point! But there's nothing redeemable about this. Even if Fiendsmith gets a card that destroys a light fiend for advantage or whatever, it would still be too much of an investment because he's such a high-level synchro. This is the most disappointed in reading a boss monster's effect I've ever been in this entire game. What a waste of a card. And now we have their final monster, a retrain of Leviathan. Fuck. Fabled... I'm not even gonna try that one.
I'm not reading that.
Is the only generic Fabled synchro. Surprisingly enough, since it's also a level 10. You'd think they'd save that for the lower level guys, but whatever, I guess. I'm not gonna look at Gift Horse in the mouth. Or demon, in this case, I guess. I don't know. Once per turn, during the main phase, quick effect. You can tribute any number of Fabled monsters, and if you do, take control of that many face-up monsters your opponent controls, but their effects are negated. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one other Fabled card in your graveyard, return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, add that target to your hand. You can only use this effect of Fabled... Nope, once per turn. I have a few mixed feelings about this card, but I wasn't happy when it was first revealed, also coming from that last wave of support. They finally gave Leviathan a second shot, even going so far as to let him take control of that evil swarm virus. And all they could do with him is still make him kill himself? I mean, at least he's actually doing it this time instead of begging for someone else to. I know he doesn't have to be tributed specifically, but let's be real. Even in a Fabled deck, you're not gonna be having that many on your end board during their turn. And his effect is designed with him being in the grave in mind. The fact that he's generic means that he will most often be the only Fabled on the field when splashed into other decks. It is a unique ability for a boss monster to steal from the opponent like that rather than a boring negation. I mean, it still negates technically, but at least he's unique about it. That being said, would it kill them to let him be a bit more proactive? I want... Fuck it. Leviathan... Sure. To be able to stay on my field while still disrupting the opponent. The new Orcus boss can do that, and they came out at the same time! I really don't care how lore accurate this is. If all this fucker's doing is dying, then what kind of investment can they expect from me about him? Again, if I'm gonna run a generic level 10 synchro, I'm running Barone. It is still good in this deck, like it is explicitly better with more Fableds on the field. But much like Lurie, bro is just outclassed. If anyone in the deck deserved to inherit that curse from him, I could think of no one more deserving than Leviathan. How perfectly cyclical. Oh god, we're almost done. Now for the back row, starting with their field spell, Stairway to a Fabled Realm. When this card is activated, you can send one Fabled monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can target one Fabled monster in your graveyard, discard 2 cards, and if you do, add that monster to your hand. You can only activate this effect of Stairway to a Fabled Realm once per turn. If your Fabled monster attacks an opponent's monster and you have less cards in your hand than your opponent, your monster gains attack equal to the difference in the number of cards times 200! During damage calculation only. You can only activate one Stairway to a Fabled Realm per turn. I am, once again, going to ignore the stat buff, as it is irrelevant to the rest of the Fabled strategy, but I will at least admit it's a nice bonus for when it matters. How else is Leviathan expected to beat over a Volcanic Emperor? Although he probably already killed me from all the comboing I was doing. Anyway, activating this card gives you a free Foolish, and that's pretty much all that matters. The additional discarding 2 to bring back 1 effect might also be useful on occasion, like if you want to add what you dump and just have 2 discard targets, but it's mostly for the Foolish. Run 1 to search. Their continuous spell, and the last card from their new wave of support, is Fabled Realms Revival. When this card resolves, you can set 1 Fabled spell or trap from your deck except Fabled Realms Revival. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when your Fabled monster is synchro summoned. Once per turn, you can discard 1 Fabled card, then activate one of these effects. Draw 1 card, or special summon 1 Fabled monster from your graveyard or banishment. You can only activate 1 Fabled Realms Revival per turn. The final hole that needed to be filled, Revival is able to grab whatever card you don't grab with Marcosia. Preventing your opponent from activating cards when the synchro monsters are summoned is surprisingly important because Reagan says when. Awesome, dude. Wow, so cool. Thanks. You know, for if you care about him or whatever. I don't know, when was the last time anyone cared about Reagan? Am I right or am I right? I'm doing stand-up off my own script. What the fuck, man? This still gives a window of opportunity for your opponent to negate, but at least he can activate in the first place. Also, fuck Solemn, I guess. And last but not least, this is the deck's only form of banishment recovery. Nice to have just in case of emergencies. So yeah, it's a huge consistency booster. Run 3 at all times. And the final Fabled card is the normal trap, Fabled Treason. What's wrong with you? Target 1 Fabled monster in your graveyard and 1 face-up card on the field. Discard 1 card, and if you do, special summon that monster from your graveyard, and if you do that, destroy that card on the field. You can only activate 1 Fabled Treason per turn. That might sound a bit confusing the way it's worded, so allow me to simplify it. This makes you discard a card after activation, then, if you do, makes you summon a monster from grave, Then, if you do that, destroy a different card on the field, all while needing to target the cards before resolving, except for the one discarded from hand. Oh hey, found more Leviathan tech! It's one of those effects that has to be performed in sequence, otherwise the rest of the effect doesn't go through. That and the targeting are why it's a little confusing, but it's actually surprisingly straightforward. Proc a discard, out a problem card, and gain field presence, which, funny enough, could include Leviathan. And that snatch effect specifically is a soft once per turn, really taking them back to their roots with that stipulation. It easily provides a lot of advantage, and is one of the deck's more disruptive plays, so running one is ideal. Holy shit, I'm done, wow. Oh boy. I can't believe I went over all these fucking cards, and maybe half of them at most are even remotely decent. The true curse of being a discard-focused strategy is that it leaves you with a lot of negative investment. But it seems like this deck was designed around working within that stipulation, at least to a point. Unfortunately, it really wasn't enough, even with the inherent synergy of Fiendsmith, to give them any sort of relevancy. I'm sure they have the potential to do something really crazy if given the right type of cards and opportunity. If Lurie can rise from the ashes of mediocrity, who's to say the deck as a whole can't as well? I'll admit that they kind of jumped the shark with that last boss monster. So hopefully we can actually get something with teeth this time around. My hope is for an Andre 3-train, making them look like a demon version of Six Sam at that point. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got an endless staircase to comedically fall down. See you next time. Surely.